He's won 5 Grammys, 59 Dove Awards, Artist of the Year, Dove Awards 7 times, if I'm not correct. Latter two are records. If I'm shorting you on something, please let me know, Stephen Curtis Chapman. But man, we do appreciate you being here. That you're going to be performing at the Shades Mountain Baptist Church on February the 27th. Tickets still available, and we're just glad that you're coming back to Birmingham to perform.
Thank you, Mike. Well, it is great to visit with you. It is always good to come to Alabama now, especially because that means I'm going to get to see two of my youngins, my two daughters that are both living in Tuscaloosa now, going to University of Alabama. So roll tide on that. And we actually pass through Birmingham very regularly now. We were there every home game this last fall, and we'll be there. Stevie Joy, as you mentioned, is a cheerleader. I have a daughter that's a cheerleader there now, and then Shoei is a graduate student. So always loved Alabama, but I love it more now than ever because a lot of my heart is there. And anytime I get to come, plus, I mean, we just made so many friends at the university, and just amazing, wonderful people. And so they're all coming over to Birmingham to this concert to see me. So we're going to have a lot of Tuscaloosa folks there as well.
We don't want to alienate any Auburn fans. You're welcome to the
True.
concert as well.
That's right. It will not be there will be it's what's the word I'm looking for? It'll be very neutral,
Fair and
common ground.
balanced. Yeah.
Very balanced, fair and balanced. Gonna be very very common ground. I mean, I may accidentally a roll tide might slip out. I can't promise that just because I've got to have my loyalties.
Right.
Because my daughter, but yes, it is all are welcome for sure. But super excited about it, buddy.
What has it been like so far? I mean, being able, we went through the pandemic. I know you've performed already at several places, not to mention, the Grand Ole Opry. But what's it been like though, being back amongst the fans and playing new music and maybe also some of your older stuff?
Yeah. Well, there's a saying that, well, I remember it in a song, actually, an old Joni Mitchell song that Amy Grant recorded too. It says, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And boy, music, the pandemic obviously had devastating impact and continues to on so many people, on the vocations and just loss of life and income and all of that. And it's had, globally. So, for me personally, not being able to do, I mean, music just, got shut down. I mean, you couldn't, no concerts, no gatherings for a season. Finally, out of desperation, myself, Michael W. Smith, and my buddy Mac Powell, who's a huge Alabama fan as well. So that was kind of a fun connection for us. Yeah, he's big lead singer for the band Third Day and now doing his own stuff. But we went out and said, we got to find a way. So we went to drive-in theaters. And a lot of folks started doing that because you could stay in your car, it could be distance, and it was great. I mean, I actually really enjoyed it. Nothing like a concert, setting where you can really connect with an audience. It was people were honking their horns instead of applause. It's like in the song, it's like honk, honk, honk. So that's a little weird, but it was still great just to be with people. But I think coming back, and thankfully, at least from what I can tell and what we're seeing and hearing, as all indications are that things are on the decline as far as the the numbers growing with the virus and all of that. So thankfully, hopefully, it's going to continue to go that way. But it has truly for me, and now this is my 35th year from the release of my first record, if you can believe that. It was 35 years ago. It was 1987 when my first record came out. So this is kind of a big year. I'm in the studio making some new music because I'm just super excited to say, hey, after 35 years of doing this, I'm still as passionate and still, as thankful, in many ways more thankful for the gift of music. Songs that I've written over the years that people will say, man, that song was, we got married to, your song, I Will Be Here, or I danced, heard it yesterday. Somebody said, just 2 weekends ago, I danced with my daughter. They surprised me and Cinderella started playing and I'm crying. And, so I mean, I hear those stories. And so my music has been, all those years, has kind of been a soundtrack for a lot of folks' lives in a way. And so this concert, getting a chance to go back now and be with people and sing these songs and tell these stories and just remember, you just see people, you see the tears, you can see the smiles, and you can almost see the memories and just the thoughts of, wow, there's a lot of life in those songs.
people can, still get your autobiography, Heaven in the Real, Between Heaven and the Real World,
Mm,
Stephen Curtis Chapman. So it's
yep.
still available. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because there's so much in there that people can read for themselves. But I do want to ask you some questions about it. First of all, I was really surprised by your candor in there.
Mm.
And because you really were very transparent, you and telling your life story, visited some very dark memories. And I'm just curious, how difficult was that entire process?
Well, I really, Mike, I went into it saying that, I feel like the first thing was I really want to be honest. I feel like there's no point in me writing a book that just kind of skims the surface. And, I do a lot of interviews and I get, you get 10, 15 minutes and you always feel like, man, I don't have the opportunity to really go deep. And all of us, with my songs, I get a chance to do that. But even that's a 3.5 minute song. There's so much story and life behind those songs. I mean, you take a song like "I Will Be Here," when you hear a lyric in there like, "I will be here when you feel like being quiet," and when you need to speak your mind, I will listen. Well, that goes by in 3 or 4 seconds. But the reality of that is, you know, the times that my wife has not known, our communicate. How do we talk this out? She came from a family where you just kind of stuff it all in, and I'm from this family where you're just going to talk it out, and that was a real challenge for our marriage. I mean, it sent us through the doors of many counselors, and what happens, I think, sometimes, for all of us is that we see someone, particularly if someone's on stage or someone's on the screen, and we want to imagine that their life is different and better. And boy, if we could just have it like they do, it's the grass is greener on the other side. And it just felt very important for me. If I'm going to do this, I want people to understand, um, not just, hey, my story, matters so much and it's so important. It's more, look, I'm more encouraged, most encouraged when somebody sits down and go, man, I've really struggled. There's been a lot of times I don't know how I'm gonna figure this out. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm clueless. My marriage is struggling. It's hard. It's just a lot harder than I thought. But I just felt like that was really important to do, especially for friends who have journeyed with me in these songs, to really go kind of behind the curtain and say, let me share with you the stories that made this, and really hopefully that people would then just feel less alone, and say, man, golly. I mean, I read a book recently, and I'm a little rabbit trail, but I read a book called Companions in the Darkness. And it
Mhm.
was the story of 7 saints, different just, leaders in the church from history who struggle intensely with depression, with discouragement, with
Hmm.
hopeless. I mean, even the suicidal thoughts. And it was just weird to say one of the most encouraging books, because you're talking about Martin Luther, you're talking about John Newton, who wrote Amazing Grace,
Hmm.
you're talking about Mother Teresa, you're talking about, these incredible, men and women of the Christian faith who just many days were like, I don't even know if I believe right now, but I'm going to choose to just keep by faith taking the next step. And so anyway, that being such an encouragement to me, I just really set out to say I want to be honest, but I want to do that. That it was kind of the two words were honesty and honor, because I really want to honor my family. I want to honor my parents and their struggles and the challenges and all those things, but still honor them, because that's ultimately, what I'm called to do, particularly, as a son to my family. And so that was because I sometimes books, I think we can get so honest that, man, I'm just going to put it all out there and just,
Right.
let it all hang out, let everybody know all the awful things. And yet, how do you do that in a way that still really honors, the people that are a part of the story? So I appreciate you saying that.
No, well, because to me, it served its purpose because what was striking to me were several things. And I mentioned all your accomplishments, but and you mentioned, the struggles in your marriage, and it made me say, that means, man, Stephen Curtis Chapman gets angry every now and then, and then, but the other thing that was striking to me was some of the insecurities you talked about had insecurities that your voice wasn't good enough, or, or during a concert, am I going to sound good enough? And I just think that was so encouraging to so many people in different fields. Did you feel that?
Mm.
Have you gotten feedback from people about that?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that has been such an encouragement. And again, I wrestled with it, my honestly, because part of me was like, man, I don't want to sound like I'm just, it's like, come on, Chapman, just get it together, quit your whining, it's like, but I feel like there's something, really powerful about saying, man, I did, when I started this whole thing out, I would listen to singers. I mean, and I still do. I mean, I'll do a concert. I did a rehearsal. Here's an example. I did a rehearsal last night for an upcoming thing I'm doing in Kentucky for the tornado victims there this coming Sunday, doing a little thing and with Ricky Skaggs. And I mean, I grew up huge fan of Ricky Skaggs. I can't believe I'm even in the room with him and we're playing songs together and he's singing a verse and I'm singing a verse and we're trading off and it's his band, Kentucky Thunder, and they're playing my songs. But I walked in the room and literally I'm like, to get my guitar out of the case and start playing with these guys is I have to sort of just, all right, I'm just going to keep moving forward because I'm intimidated. These guys are like the best of the best musicians in the world. I mean, Ricky Skaggs is, Hall of Fame, Country Music Hall of Fame. He's this incredible musician. So much, and it's silly, I know it's silly, but it's what I feel, and I think we all feel that way. You walk in a room and and you think you're kind of going, man, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? Am I enough? And I think that really is as a Christian. I mean, that is what we learn and know from reading the Bible is realize that that's the voice of, our enemy, God's enemy, that says, yeah, you're not enough. You're not enough. And God says, no, you're loved. And, my grace is enough if you'll receive that. And so, which again, that's been the story of my songs all these years in different forms. That's kind of the heartbeat of my music. But yeah, I think all of us wrestle with that, and I've heard a lot of people say, man, thank you for, yeah, if you can look at that guy up there and go, man, he struggles with that, man, that gives me a lot of hope. I feel way less alone, a lot more hope in that.
I'm almost out of time with you. So I do want to ask you on a couple other questions because they're a funny moment. Can you just recount the story? Because you've been to you've met a lot of famous people.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've played with a lot of famous people. So these two questions. One, can you quickly share the story? Being at the Grammys, I think you and your wife were about to either get in a cab or an elevator. I can't remember which. And a couple famous people jumped up ahead of you, and your wife didn't particularly like it. And then secondly, who is the coolest secular artist that you maybe have jammed with or met or anything
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, you're telling a story. One year when I got to present on the pre-telecast at the Grammy Awards, kind of before it goes on the air. They give a lot of awards away like they do on the air, but they do a whole, slew of awards before they ever go live to television, and which is usually where the Gospel Music Awards are, along with all the, jazz and different genres that are not going to be featured on the big primetime show. And so I hosted one year one of those little segments or presented and read the names and all that. And so because of that, we had backstage access and we had our car that brought us and dropped us off. We were going to leave out the backstage. And so they were bringing the limos around to the backstage elevator. And I think we were at the Shrine Auditorium is what I'm thinking we were, maybe in LA, but we, we, we're standing in line. My wife was so mad at me because I wouldn't let her bring her camera. She wanted to bring, and this was back when you had this was before the phones. You didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
This is that long ago. So it was like she wanted to bring her camera. I said, no, we're going to be backstage. That is not cool. You do not take pictures of people, And so we're standing in line waiting, and we hear these voices behind us, and it's a British kind of accent. And it's like, man, that sounds kind of familiar. And then you hear this sort of gruff kind of New Jersey kind of, yeah, it was a good show, man. And I'm like, I tell my wife, I said, don't turn around now. But I think Sting and Springsteen, the boss, are having a conversation behind us right now. And my wife she freaked out. Well, then about that time they call them, the guy spots them who's calling the people to the elevator because we're all waiting in a line. There's probably 20, 30 people waiting in a line, and they're taking people down this elevator to get to their car one at a time. And they're waiting until the car comes around. Well, when you're Bruce Springsteen and Sting, you don't wait for a car, the car waits for you. So they recognize, they're like, Mr. Springsteen, Sting, your car, come ahead, come to the front of the line. And my wife, and it was in good fun, but I was like just trying to find a hole to crawl in because you got to know my wife, but this is my wife's personality. She literally out loud says, hey, wait a minute. We're all waiting in line here. Why do y'all get to cut line? And I'm just back there going, I can't believe you're doing, what are you doing? and
Uh,
they're like, well, I'll just wait in line, and I couldn't believe it. I said, you didn't really just do that, did you? And she said, yeah, I mean, they're just people too. I mean, yeah, they're a big deal, and I want to take their picture, which, but I'm like, well, you wanted to take their picture, but then you're now, you're going to kind of, give them a hard time for cutting in the front of
right.
the line. Anyway, that tells you a lot about my wonderful bride, who is feisty and, always looking for, she's stirring it up. I'm trying to kind of be invisible, and she's like, back there making a scene, but pretty funny. So yeah. Anyway, and then you asked him, what was it? You
The
asked him,
coolest person you jam with, maybe secular artists,
yeah,
either
yeah. I
or
mean, well, I mentioned Ricky Skaggs. I mean, as far as a musician, he is an amazing, accomplished, just world class musician, guitar, mandolin, and of course, I grew up with bluegrass music, so
right.
his music, to me, is kind of like that's that's like some of the best music on the planet. So, getting to work with him, getting to there's an artist actually. I'm trying to think through, the different people that I've actually gotten to play music with, or be in some kind of a context where actually playing music rather than just meeting them or doing something. There's an amazing guitarist, a guy named Johnny Lang, and he's a jazz, he's a blues guitarist and
Okay.
singer, that kind of more in the blues rock scene. Young guy, and turns out he was a fan of my music. I was a
Oh,
fan listening to his music, and went to his concert at the Ryman in Nashville. And one of his keyboard guys heard that I was there, brought me backstage. My sons were with me, introduced us to Johnny Lang. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm such a huge fan. And then a few years later, he came and played a guitar solo on one of my records, and sang with me and played along with me. Um, but and came out on stage, actually on tour with me one night and did it.
wow.
But trying to think, yeah, as far as people that I played music, of course, in Nashville, I've gotten to do things with a lot of artists from country music. Ronnie Millsap, who I
Oh,
grew up a
wow.
huge fan of his. Ronnie and I
Yeah.
sang. In fact, I did a duet on his latest record. He did a duets record, and he invited me to come sing on it.
Oh,
He had
wow.
two artists. He had these amazing artists, and he said he had a song, and it was a duets album. And he said, "Hey, I think maybe Stevie Wonder would be good on this song." And he went, "Wait a minute, this is a story I heard." He said, "Wait a minute, let's get that Stephen Curtis Chapman guy. I like him because we had sung together at the Ryman, and he's like, I like that guy. Let's get him to come do it." So got to do
That's
that with
awesome.
him. Got to sing on the Opry. Was playing there one night. Larry Gatlin. I grew up a fan of Larry Gatlin, Gatlin
Yes.
Brothers music.
Hmm.
Sang us, got to do a song, uh, do some stuff with him. Lady Antebellum,
Wow.
Hillary Scott, who's a very dear friend, and she and I have done some things together. So I mean, it's amazing some of the people that I've had a chance to. Brad Paisley did a song with him.
He's awesome too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's amazing. Such a great dude, and great guitar player and singer. So
Well, I know
yeah,
they had the same respect for you. They all know you, and I know my time's up. And I know folks know the story, the tragic story of your 5-year-old daughter Maria, who
mm,
was tragically killed in the
mm,
driveway, an accidental thing with your son driving the vehicle. Everybody knows that story. It's in the book, well chronicled. Google it if you haven't heard it. But I just want to wrap up with this. In light of that, you trying to your family trying to move past that immense hurt. When you look at, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today. You touched
yeah,
on the pandemic. There's a
yeah,
lot of divide in the country. The words from one of your own song, where's the hope? Where's the peace that makes
yeah,
this life complete? Just what are your thoughts now coming out of such tragedy,
mm,
and when you look at the hurt that's going on in our world today?
yeah. Well, I mean, two things. What I have learned, and I've written a lot of songs about it, but I've learned exponentially more at a deeper level than I really probably ever wanted to know. Um, if I had scripted it, we would all, script our life to be easy and no hard things and loss and grief. But we've, as a world nation, been through an incredible season of loss and heartache, and it's part of the reality. I mean, Jesus, the one who came to bring us peace, and make all things whole and complete, says, in this world you're going to have trouble. You will have trouble in this world. And then he goes on to say, but take heart, I've overcome the world. So if you put your hope in me instead of in this world, that's where you're going to find real hope. That's where you're going to find an anchor, that'll hold. That's where we find a foundation you can stand on. And I think having learned that, and I would say that, I think to sing songs about it, to say, yes, I grew up, this is a truth that I grew up with. I believe it. I know it. It's changed my life. That's profound and true. But then to walk through something that, I mean, there's no reason that I should be having this conversation with you and still have any hope or even be alive, my marriage be intact. I mean, most marriages won't survive the loss of a child, staggering statistics, that destroys that. The fact that my son is still alive, and my son is not just alive but thriving and full of hope and married and has a daughter, and all my kids, my older kids we have 6 grandbabies now. My wife and I are still as big of a mess as we've ever been, but we're as in love as we've ever been, and we're just by God's grace, we're just uh, enjoying life together and still trying to figure it out together. But I would say that, with particularly just our world being in such a desperate place right now, I can say from a deeper place than ever before. Um, as I heard someone say it, and I'm not even sure. I want to say it might have been Corey Ten Boom, who was a lady who, went through the Nazi Holocaust and was in a concentration camp and came out with her faith intact. But I think it may have been her, but someone that said, I've been to the bottom, and the bottom is solid. The bottom, it's like I've hit all the way to what I really believe to be rock bottom, but there is a rock there, and that is my faith, and that is that God, even in that darkest place, has not left me, my family, without hope. We haven't understood it all a lot of the times. Still don't get it. Still a lot of questions. Still wrestle with the anger and the God. How could this be?
Hmm.
It's a lifetime of still processing that, and we've just made a fierce commitment. I think as a family, my wife and I, to not, ever try to present it as anything different than that, but to say, but we're just taking, this is a journey of faith, but it has been that faith that sustained us through our loss, and we just want to keep encouraging people with that, because we're all at some level or another experiencing a lot of hurt and confusion and pain and suffering. Um, and God has promised to not let us do that alone if we'll trust Him and reach out to Him. And I believe that wouldn't be here if I didn't.